Hey friends, it's Eileen Thompson. Welcome back to the Faith Driven Leader podcast. Today's conversation is a really special one for me because our guest is somebody whose story intersects quite a bit with mine. I'm joined today by Megan Milar. Megan is the COO and the co-owner of the Garage Group. And if you know, and even a little bit of my story, you know that Megan is the one who, along with another partner, ultimately stepped in to lead the Garage Group after Jason and I moved on. So this conversation is personal and I think really powerful. I will tell you that Megan's career path is anything but linear. She actually started her career at Procter Gamble. She and I were both there, although we didn't really overlap. Then she stepped into entrepreneurship at a pretty young age. She owned real estate. She launched staffing and marketing companies, and then she eventually became the owner and operator of a couple of GNC franchises. Later, she and her husband Ken moved their young family to halfway across the world to India, where they lived there for several years and where her fourth child was born, and Ken was working for Procter Gamble over there. That experience moving to India changed the trajectory of her life and her work. We're going to talk a little bit about that on today's show. After she returned to the US, Megan started a social enterprise goods company, kind of importing goods made by marginalized women, really inspired by her time in India. She became very deeply involved in the social impact space, and now she joined the Garage Group several years ago, and now she's the COO and the co-owner. So it's not a very linear path, as you can hear. So when you step back and look at her story, she would say, and I would probably say, it was a roller coaster, twists and turns, corporate roles, entrepreneurship, global moves, nonprofit work. Now she's leading a company. But she would say, and I would observe too, through it all, there's this consistent willingness to follow wherever God leads, even when that path doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're going to talk in this episode about this idea of courageous obedience in a really non-linear path. Megan's also going to share one of the boldest prayers she ever prayed and the remarkable way that God answered it. So if you've ever wondered whether your career path is too messy or too unexpected or too different than the plan that you imagined, I think this conversation is really going to encourage you and bless you. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Faith Driven Leader podcast. I'm so excited to talk to Megan Milar. Megan is the co-owner and the COO of the Garage Group. And if any of you listening to the show know my story, Megan took over the Garage Group from Jason and I. So this is a really special conversation for me because in this season, we're talking a lot about career transitions. And Megan, you and I have had such a fascinating set of opportunities to be experiencing career transitions in each of our lives that affected each other. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I think it's a really important conversation, and I love that, you're doing the intersection of both faith and career. It's something I think you and I have both had a lot of conversations about through the years. So glad to see, you getting these examples out to the world. I think it's important testimonies.
Yeah, it's always fun, and I always learn some from these conversations. But I really wanted to start with, before we even get into the career stuff, this is a crazy season for you. You're running a company, you're raising 4 kids, a couple of them in college, you are navigating health issues with parents, like you are feeling the squeeze in a major, major way. And I wonder if you could reflect a little on this season. What has this season been like for you? Tell us about what the season is like for you.
Yeah. A lot of uncharted waters. So we've been, for sure, I think as kids transition into young adults, your parenting style has to change so much. So I feel like there's been a lot of just relearning, what that looks like, relearning and learning both, like going back to resources that I've used in the past to say, how can those resources help me today? And then honestly, learning some new ones. I just found out our daughter's in Enneagram 5, which is one of the rarest, especially for females. So, even ChatGPT has been helpful to me. So like learning new resources, to help figure out how to best support and coach her in this season. She he's making big life choices, and our role is not the same as it was when she was little. So
Yeah.
it's been really great. I love seeing the kids kind of all emerge on their own. All four are different. Our oldest son is studying abroad in Spain this semester, so it's great to see him just living the best life. And as you know, travel's kind of been a big part of the DNA of our family. So to see
Yeah.
him kind of make those choices on his own and go there and make the most of that opportunity. So there are lots of highlights, and then there are definitely some lowlights, with
Yeah.
both my parents dealing with dementia and just recently had to move my mom into assisted living. Those are some hard moments in there too. I
Yeah.
think it's been a season of trusting God and just praying for wisdom and discernment to just one day at a time and one step
Yeah.
at a time, and just trying to tackle each of these challenges and as they come up, and then making sure we're just being present to celebrate the wins along the way too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been an intense season, I would say, just
Yeah.
that those kind of meaningful relationships are evolving as they
Mm.
should, but
Yeah.
I feel like there's an intensity in trying to be present in it. We always, told our kids that we'll have foundational things that are the same, but we're going to try to be the best customized parents to each of them, because each of them have different gifts and different needs and different strengths, and so
Yeah.
we really do try to adapt what one kid needs versus another. So
Yeah.
I feel like having two in high school and two in college isn't just an interesting time, because we've been there and done that, the high school stuff, but
Yeah.
navigating even that transition. So we have another junior who's trying to figure out what college he
What's
wants to go
next?
to and which path he's going to take. And so it's exciting to see all of it, but it is a opportunity to be very present, I feel like, and just
Yeah.
trust that God's going to eliminate the next stone in the
Yeah.
pathway. So,
Yeah. It's actually it's interesting that you would share it that way because one of the things I've always admired about you, Megan, is that presence and the I don't sense that you get anxious about the future.
mm,
You just live in the moment. Not that you don't plan. I know you're a good planner and you think
mm,
about those things, but you don't get caught up in the we can't predict exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. And especially in this season where you're spinning so many plates, it's more of like, okay, I'm just going to take it one day at a time. Like I think that's such an important thing for people to remember who are in that place of there's just no way you can anticipate. We were talking this morning that your basement flooded this
yeah,
morning. Like you couldn't have
exactly.
anticipated that. You
Yes.
just have to like take it one day at a time, one moment at a time.
Moment at a time for sure.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's, I just went to a disc assessment yesterday and I'm an S. So I think
Yeah.
that steadiness comes through, and I loved the leader that facilitated this discussion yesterday said that S's present like a duck on the water, where they just look like it's nice and smooth, but underneath the
Yeah.
water, the feet are like going, a million miles a minute. And that's kind of what I feel like sometimes. So
Yeah.
I do think there is, I can rely on that sense
Yeah.
of steadiness, but I would be, it's sometimes a facade that helps me even get
Mm,
through, versus
interesting.
I think that being like the true reality. I know it shows up that way, but
Yeah.
are definitely anxious moments. But those are the moments that just try to get back into the Word,
Yeah.
uh, and just be present and know that it's a wild place, but ultimately God's in charge, and the closer I can stay to Him, the easier it's all going to be. So I
Yeah.
think that there's that steadiness has definitely been something. I mean, I think even our organization, for a long
Yeah.
time, I was the only S in the organization.
Yeah.
And so I think being around a lot of, others in that place, that
Yeah.
is opportunity even within my family, that I can show up
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. That's
Mm.
that's that's very insightful. And I wonder for how many people who are that steady presence, there also is the anxiousness. And I love that you kind of said, yeah, but I can also rely on what this
Mm.
steadiness that I know about myself. And
Yep.
it's rooted in the word and your relationship with the Lord and all of those things. That's I think that's really important for people who are in that. We're all in different levels of busy season,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and just reminding ourselves that take it one day at a time, root ourselves in the Lord. We're going to get through it.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
going to find the joy in it too, hopefully.
Even if the basement
Hopefully.
floods.
That's right.
Yeah,
Even if
we'll
the
get through
basement
that
floods, we
too.
get through it. We get through it. Well, so another thing that I've always been fascinated by is your career path. And we don't need to rehash the whole career path because I talked about that in the intro of the show, but I'd love to hear a story or two, maybe like a key moment in your career where you really felt like God was leading you
Mm.
somewhere. And like, tell us that story. How did he guide you? How did you know it was him?
Uh-huh.
And I'll leave it to you to pick which one of your many very fascinating transitions or moments you'd
Yes.
highlight.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I think my career has been a lot like a roller coaster. It's taken lots of twists and turns, but
Yes.
grateful for every one of those chapters along the
Yeah.
way. I think it's been really wonderful. I'm back in a season of praying bold prayers, I would say.
Yeah.
So, uh, interestingly, the I think the one story I would love to share is probably the boldest prayer I ever said in my life.
Yeah.
Probably on the surface looks more like it impacted my husband's career, but it was really, I think, a whole different trajectory that it sent me on was when he had wanted to pursue an opportunity to live in a third world country.
Mm.
He was with P&G, and there was an opportunity where they had built a new factory in a remote part of northern India, and
Mm.
they talked to him about that opportunity. He sent me a Wikipedia link to the name of the city, and that was all I got in an email from him one day.
Oh my gosh.
And our kids were very young, so we had three at the time. They were 6 months old. Rowan was 6 months old. Tegan was like 2.5, and Braden was upper threes. And
Wow.
he came home and said there could be this opportunity to go there. And pretty quickly, P&G actually came back to him and said, we think it's too big of a stretch
Mm.
for American to go there and be successful in that role. And so they hired somebody from the Asian market to go there.
Okay. Okay.
That person lasted about 6 weeks and
Really?
didn't make it. So they came back to him and said, like, are you sure you want this? And it was very much his dream to do that. We had traveled a lot. I love traveling, and I love coming back to Ohio and within 14 days. So it was not a shared dream, and I felt like it was one where I just had to go. If I was going, I needed to go in total peace. So
Yeah.
definitely the boldest prayer of my life was I mean, I literally told God, like, if we're supposed to go there, you need to take care of everything except pack my bags, which was,
Wow.
in hindsight, really like an ultimatum to God. When
Or a
people warn
fleece.
you, like,
Sometimes we call that a fleece. I don't
right,
know.
yeah. It's like, and they warn you sometimes about be careful what you pray for,
Yeah.
and that was probably one of them. But that was what was on my heart in the moment, and I just had the
Yeah.
courage to say, like, I will go, but I will go happy and with peace. If
Yeah.
I, but I need to know for sure that that's where we're supposed to be. And
Yeah.
so, actually, within about an 8 week period, without posting anything for sale, a couple at our tiny little church that we went to came up and said they'd like to come down and look at our house and potentially buy it, even though it wasn't for sale. Uh,
Wow.
and they gave us 6 months to get out, which was pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah, like within thirty minutes after church, we were in an agreement on a price. I
My
had
gosh.
somebody say, "Oh, if you end up moving, I'd love to buy your car." I'm like, "My car's nothing special. You could go buy this car like now."
Yeah.
But no, it's okay. We'll just wait and figure out if you move or not. And at the time, I had three general nutrition centers. So I was a
Okay.
franchisee. I had two of them in Cincinnati and one in northern Indiana. And I told my husband, I said, like the Cincinnati stores I manage actively. I'm in them every day.
Mm-hmm.
The one in Indiana could probably survive without me being in the country because we had a great manager there. But it was, we got an email. I'll never forget it. It was sitting in the Smoky Mountains, our kids playing with a bunch of sticks. And I checked my email and I had an email from another franchisee here locally who wanted to buy the two Cincinnati
Oh
stores.
my gosh.
And I just looked at that email and said, "You got that job in India." And he was, "How do you know I got that job?" I was like, "Because literally the Lord just liquidated our house, our cars, and the businesses." And he had the
Wow.
offer on Monday morning when he went in.
Wow. So all
So
of that happened even before he had the offer.
all of it happened before we had the offer. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is like I said, you have to be careful what you pray for, but the insurance company or the moving company came to pack up our house, and uh they said based on the insurance policy, I wasn't even allowed to pack the bags. So my prayer that was to the Lord, like, you take care of everything and I'll pack the bags. And of course he's like, "Oh, girl, like
I'm
I'll
going to
take
take care
care
of
of
more.
literally everything and pack your
Wow.
bags." So it ended up being, we ended up selling our last GNC store while we lived in India. But
Yeah.
I think because of that amazing opportunity, it looked like a career opportunity for my husband, but in reality, it got us out of the GNC stores. I did volunteering with a nonprofit in India. And when I came back, I started a social enterprise business that
Yeah.
supported that nonprofit. And
Mhm.
so that was a big career transition for me because coming back and, I was an
Yeah.
entrepreneur but within a framework, and a brand, that had a great system, franchise system, to
Hmm.
go come back and just start something on my own. And then I got pretty involved in the social enterprise space, and ended up realizing that my strength, was really helping other social enterprises
Mm.
set up the back end of their businesses,
Yeah.
which so I started doing that consulting, which is actually how you and I met.
That's right. Oh,
I,
that's what a cool story.
yeah,
What an
yeah,
amazing story. I mean, and what I hear in it is if you give it to the Lord truly and say, my goal is to follow
yeah,
with peace, he
with
really
peace.
does take care of the details. And I think so often we're afraid to pray that, or we don't think he cares about the details, or we think, I think God wants me to do this. That means I have to do all this work to make it
Yeah,
happen. And it really our biggest work is in our hearts, getting our
yes,
hearts ready.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because
What
even
a
my
what a cool
husband,
story.
Angie would pay for the spouse to travel to go for a house hunting
Yeah.
trip. And I even told my husband, I said, "I'm not going because what if I get there and I don't like it? It's not going
Mm.
to change. Like I've said yes, the Lord made it very clear this is where we're going. So you can go pick out the house and I will go there
Wow.
when we move." And
Wow.
it was a big adventure, it really.
Yeah.
I think in hindsight, I learned that not only was the Lord putting me on a different career trajectory, but He was also helping me see a spiritual relationship in a different way
Mm.
outside of the institution of church.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of personal growth in terms of, even though it's odd to put you in a setting that's mostly Hindu and a mix of other
Yeah.
religions, there's very few Christians there
Yeah.
and very few churches, but it really gave me an opportunity to, you know, kind of grow as in that relationship.
Yeah. Wow. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. So I was thinking about not only that chapter, which you just outlined, like totally different things that the Lord had you do, but you've had also just very different experiences. And I'm wondering how do they, what is there a calling that's consistent through those, or has that evolved for you over the years through different positions? How do you distinguish your calling from like
Mhm.
these different roles and jobs you've had?
Yeah. And I think it's a really valid question because, these chapters have looked so different,
Yeah.
and there's not been a very consistent through line, I think, on the surface, if you look at
Yeah.
it. But I really think that I love bringing order, into kind of these chaotic, opportunities. And I think in all of those roles, I was, or especially early, like I was being prepared for that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of growth of understanding what I could control and what I couldn't control. Even
Mm,
in my early days at P&G, I experienced a lot of that as well. And I think being somebody that's a achiever is like one of my strengths. And so somebody that's like very oriented towards action and achievement and performance, to be honest, in a lot of ways. I feel like each of these chapters has really prepared me to
yeah.
be in this season, even personally, like learning how to let go of what I can't control, learning how to ask for help, was
Yeah.
something I really struggled with early on that I feel like I've matured into.
Yeah.
And I think that calling has really been to get me in a place where I realize now, like it's leading people through different transitions
Seasons. Hmm.
in seasons and these, even whether it's in the organization or it's in my community, I feel like there has been a lot of just lessons that I've learned through each of those chapters on
Yeah.
patience and
Yeah.
learning to let go and learning to trust that the Lord
Yeah.
is in our details and being able to share that, with
Yeah.
others.
Yeah. So I'm hearing in that the calling has evolved a little bit over time,
Mhm.
but the recognition, and this has certainly been true for me in my career too, and my life, is each of the chapters or each of the jobs or each of the roles or each of the seasons has some, usually more than one, but some goodies in it,
Mhm.
some things that
Yeah.
the Lord is forming in us or shaping in us or teaching us or illuminating or developing in us, that ultimately, as we get kind of further along in our careers, the calling might become clearer.
Mhm.
So that makes a lot of sense. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and I think
So
that shift for me has been more from performance and to-do
yeah,
lists to people,
yeah,
like coming alongside people,
yeah,
whether it's the culture within an organization or starting a small group for women, that are in this season of life and carrying a lot. Like there's just been great opportunity
yeah,
for me, and I get really fueled by those
yeah,
things.
yeah. So it might feel like a bit of an oxymoron to some people to say that you love coming alongside people and starting groups and starting companies and owning businesses, and then to find out that you're quite an introvert.
I am, yeah.
It feels like this really interesting. I mean, almost from the surface, it might look like an oxymoron, right? But like in a world that values all this bold leadership and lots of audacity and like charisma and all those types of things, which I believe folks who are introverted still have all of those characteristics. They just operate them differently. But tell us a little bit about what that's been like for you and where's the Lord stretched you in that space?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say I'm an introvert. And I think that one area that I've been stretched in is finding how to stay fueled as an introvert,
Ah,
like protecting those spaces
yeah,
where I
yep,
can recharge. I really love small group settings. I love one-on-one, connections. I feel like a strength of mine is networking and connecting people as well. So I really like this season right now. I've been trying to meet like one new person a week, and I've just really have loved that, which also doesn't seem maybe like an introverted thing to do,
yeah,
but I find that that fuels a part of me, but then I also have to kind of hold sacred my recharge space.
yeah,
And it's been really cool. One of the, I think, best benefits that we have at TGG is we started something called Courage Days,
yeah,
where we give everybody 2 days a year to go get out of your comfort zone. And
yeah.
much like the tagline that the courageous minds only, it kind of sticks with that value of courage. And but something that was important was that we didn't define what courage looks like for people.
Mm,
I always say it's like the flavors of ice cream. Like you can walk in an ice cream shop and there's no wrong flavor, but what flavor do you want that day? And that's kind of
yeah,
how how courage is. Like, what do you need in that season?
Yeah.
And so it's been really neat to see some of our team members take advantage of those days and what does look like courage for them.
Yeah.
But for me, when I was did it at the very start, and one of the things that I did was go travel to a cabin by myself. Like there's, I have a husband that I met in college, so I've had a travel buddy my whole life, and
Yeah.
we've gone all over the place together. And then with four kids, I always have somebody in tow, which I
Yeah.
love, but it does not warrant a whole lot of alone time. That's
Yeah.
very, like, really sacred, uninterruptible alone
Yeah.
time. So 4 years ago, I started that practice of going to this cabin in West Virginia and really having like true solitude days where I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time with the Lord. I do it a lot now around like the beginning of the year to try to, plan for the year ahead. And it's just been, even my mom will now be like, "Oh, I feel like you need to go back to West Virginia." I was like, it's definitely become a happy place. And I've taken the
Yeah.
family there too. And some girlfriends have joined me a few days here and there, but I always
Yeah.
save some days that are just by myself and
Yeah.
really to get away from the noise. And I tell my family, like, don't call me in unless it's an emergency. And I
Yeah.
do set some boundaries around that. So I think that's been a part of this introverted
Yeah.
tendencies, is to like hold sacred those spaces.
Yeah.
But then I can go and operate, like, and very much enjoy meeting new people and making those connections and being in these smaller groups.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's so valuable. I mean, you probably remember in the days that we were both at the garage group that I try to go away once a quarter and have a day with the Lord, and it's still something that I practice. And I was up at Miami University a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to the leading the integration of faith and entrepreneurship students. And somebody asked me, like, well, how do you stay kind of sane? And I would
Yeah,
say I'm introverted, maybe not quite as much as you are, but I'm over there with you. And for me, the single rhythm that I think allowed me to be my best, or allows me to be my best, is that sacred space of just getting away by myself to refuel and recharge. And what I love about it is I've been reading more and more about that practice of sabbatical, or, taking a pause. And when you read through scripture, if you look for it, you see how often Jesus did it.
yeah, oh, for
Like
sure.
regularly, he went away to pray. He went away to be with his
Wilderness, people
father.
would have to go try to find him. Yeah,
Yes, yes. And it's
yeah,
it's it's one of those, it's, I guess people would say, oh, it's a secret to success, but he doesn't try to keep it a secret from us in the word. Like he shows us this
yeah,
model for, yes, you're going to pour yourself out for people, but the more that you can go get alone with the Lord and get fueled, even not even saying refueled, but get fueled so that you can go do that
yeah,
rather than depleting yourself before
right.
you fill up, is like, and I love that you do it at the beginning of the year. What a
Yeah.
great time to get energized for the year, hear what the Lord's vision is for the year, that type of thing. That's a really cool practice.
Yeah, I really felt this year I started the year in Nigeria, so I didn't have that week to do
Yeah.
it. So I did it in early December instead.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting how out of flow it felt.
Yeah.
And that kind of listening was harder. I just didn't feel like I usually have like a verse for the year, So there were like pieces that I worked on that just didn't feel I didn't feel as confident in them.
Yeah.
And I just said, you know what, I'm going to wait and just not even reopen this until 2026. And
Yeah.
it was really great, like coming back from Nigeria. My mom had fallen while we were gone. So I had to spend the first couple weeks when I was back helping with her transition. And then I reopened it, and the same words I had on paper in December that didn't feel right suddenly had this like new meaning to me when I
Oh,
read through it
wow.
again. And so I love that, like, even though I felt I left that time recharged personally, but didn't feel like as accomplished in the
Yeah.
stuff that I normally do, it was just really sweet that
Yeah.
once I reread it, it was like, oh yeah, it was all there. I just needed, the fresh year to
Yeah.
dig back into it and like you said, find those goodies, that
Yeah.
were in it. And it's just been really a great thing. So I
That's
highly
beautiful.
encourage people to do it. It takes time. It's hard to step out of our busyness and I think
Yeah.
hold that time sacred, but
Yeah.
it is definitely, I mean, I think you used to talk about work from a place of rest,
Yeah.
versus rest from a place of work. And
Yep. Yep.
you certainly modeled that as well. So it's been a great habit. And I think it
Yeah.
helps me be a better mom and a better daughter and a better business leader and a
Yeah.
better coach and all the things.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So we've talked about a bunch of stuff. I'm curious in this season right now, what is God really forming in you right now?
Mm. That's a great question when I'm asking the Lord every day. I feel like this is I'm probably in my own bit of a transition, not necessarily career transition, but I just feel like this season in life is a transition.
Hmm.
And so really talking with him closely about those things to say, what does this look like? This
Yeah.
is with aging parents and kids growing up. I have a different level of bandwidth than what I've had in the past, I would say. And like, what
Hmm.
does God want? How do I want to keep using my time and talents,
Yeah.
in a season where some of that is changing?
Yeah.
Last year, I joined the board for a foundation called New Way Foundation, and they do a lot of humanitarian efforts in Nigeria. So it was such
Hmm.
an honor to get to travel to the village and see the work that was being done this year. Was just a life-changing trip to go
Yeah.
on. And it's been a long time since we've been off the beaten path in our travels. And so I just really appreciated all that experience, how it stretched us and grew us. But
Hmm.
we had our family along for that whole event.
That's so
And
cool. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, I mean, when you go and put yourself in a place in the world that's just so radically different than our day to day, you just come back you can't help but come back with gratitude, for
Yeah.
the things that we take for granted
Yeah.
every day. And it's easy to lose it. I mean, we've just been back 2 months and already I catch myself sometimes, being able to just kind of get back into the doldrums of the hassles like the basement flooding. But I'm really grateful I have a basement to flood.
Right.
So
Exactly.
there's
Exactly.
a lot of ways that we can apply that lens. But I do think it's been an interesting time, and I feel like the last year and a half I've gone into a very introspective season,
Mm.
and I'm grateful for it. I've done a lot on wellness, my own personal wellness. I've done a lot on inner healing work,
Mm.
and uh, it's been really wonderful. And I feel like I'm emerging as a different, improved person than I was.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering and asking the Lord every day, like, what does this mean? Like, what,
Yeah.
this is a really important season, I feel like. So
Yeah.
as I'm coming out of that, I think it just continues to evolve. So it probably
Yeah.
goes back to my mantra of one day at a
One
time
day at
and
a
one
time.
step at a time, and just
Yeah.
really continuing to, be open to what the Lord has in this
Hmm.
season.
Yeah. So interesting. I was reading in Luke this morning and reading the story of the 10 minas. And in
Mm,
the story, the king, who's not yet king, gives each of his servants, 10 servants, one talent, one bag of money, one gift. And he's looking for, how are you going to use what I gave you? Are you
yeah.
going to invest it and do something with it? And what struck me differently, I've read that story hundreds of times, but what struck me different this morning was that he's constantly giving us gifts.
Mm,
Like in
yeah.
this season, this introspection, like he's giving you new levels of inner healing, maybe, or new levels of perspective, or this realization that I have different bandwidth. And like, I think he's asking us on the regular, what are you going to do with what I'm giving you? And I don't think it's from a performance place. It's really more from hey, I just gave you something really cool. Don't
Yeah.
just bury it, do something with it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and he even says, the more that you do good things with what I give you, the more I'm going to give you,
Right.
which I've been through seasons where that felt a little intimidating. Like, I don't want any more. I
Yes,
can't do anymore. I'm spinning too many
right.
plates, but at the same time, recognizing that it's actually interesting to hear you talk about where you are right now because you're running a company, but a lot of what God is growing in you is more about who you are as a mom and who you are as a daughter and
Yep.
a wife. And like he's just always working on all of those aspects of our lives. And they're not the lines between them are pretty blurred and they should be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Because I think the things you learn as a mom or a daughter impact who you are as a leader and coach,
definitely.
like you said, and how
Yep.
you interact with your teams. And, it's
Yeah.
so fascinating, really cool
And,
stuff.
and vice versa, how we grow
Yeah.
as a leader and a coach in our organization. I just went to this, um, I'm part of entrepreneur organization. So I went to an EO learning day yesterday, and it's really geared towards accelerators, like
Yeah.
people that are just starting out. And there were so many wonderful, there wasn't a whole lot of new content for me, but there were so
Yeah.
many wonderful refreshers
Ah,
that it
yeah.
was so great. And I invited somebody that I think would really benefit from that program. So I went to just kind of be there for them so they could
Yeah.
experience the day, and they were my guest. And but it's things, foundational things that,
Yeah.
we did disc assessment together 10 years ago,
Yeah.
but it was
Yeah.
so cool to stand in a corner with other S's and hear them process it.
Yeah.
And so it was just, yeah, it goes vice versa.
Yeah.
There's what we learn in our organizations and as leaders, we can bring back into our family, and
Yes.
what we learn in our
Absolutely.
family, we can take back into
Yeah.
our business. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think just continuing to be open to evolving, I think is
Yeah.
that, kind of a growth mindset. I think I'll always be a curious learner. And
Yeah.
so I just always trying to read and grow and learn and continue to develop, but
Yeah.
also ask the Lord every day, like, well, what does that mean? And,
Yeah.
help guide. There's a lot of rabbit holes I could go down that I need discernment not to also.
Yeah.
But yeah, just continuing to try to stay tuned in and
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
can.
So I can see in your background the courageous minds only. I
Mhm.
remember I remember way back when that phrase was first coined, and I know the Garage Group has this mantra of courageous minds only. You've already mentioned it once, and that courage at one point for you was going away secluded to a cabin by yourself. I'm curious, and we'll land on this, but what does courage look like for you right now?
Well, I think some days it looks like getting out of bed, especially
True answer.
when your son wakes you up and or before your alarm's set to find out the basement's flooded. So, I do think kind of back to that ice cream analogy. I do think
Yeah.
it varies so much, and that's one of the things that I really love
Mhm.
about that word courage. I think
Yeah.
it's something that I got a lot of exposure to from the Garage Group early on. But interestingly, in a couple of my kind of personality assessments, courage it shows up in
Oh,
there.
really?
And
Interesting.
yeah, and people would talk about, like it being so courageous to move to India and live there for 3 years, and our fourth child was born there. So like we've gone on these big adventures, and I feel like there has been uh, kind of this vision of courage. But I also had somebody call it out on me once that it's like a false sense of um, not a security, like a false spirit almost of
Oh,
like,
interesting.
hey, where does that tie into performance,
Ah,
and courage? And I think that that's been something I've really tried to unpack through the
hmm.
last, I don't know, maybe 5 years is where does courage show up as performance, and where does
Yeah.
courage show up as like being in an introspective season and really doing the inner healing work.
Yeah.
So I think courage just is a single word that umbrellas so
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think that it does vary day by day what courage looks like. And it's
Yeah.
sometimes I think the simplest definition would be putting one foot in front of the next,
Yeah.
and continuing on that path, and just seeing where you have biases and where do you have fear, where is kind of
Yeah.
fear crept in, and what are some of those kind of lies that we're believing. And I certainly have had that as well. And I think courage is, I love that there's a definition of courage that talks about it's not, fearlessness. It's
Yeah.
actually taking action in the
In the
face
face
of
of fear.
fear.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a powerful reframe because I think a lot of people just sometimes think courage equals fearlessness.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot that we talk about in our work is that
Yeah.
it's not fearlessness. It's
Nope.
actually quite the opposite in
Yeah.
a
It's
lot of
feeling the
ways.
fear,
It
but
is
pushing through it. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What one of the things that struck me about what you shared was that part of the courage in being willing to just take it day by day and put
Mhm.
one foot in front of the other is you don't have the handrails
Yep.
of a plan all the time. Which
Mhm.
again, I mean, I know you well enough to know that you are an excellent planner. You're
Yeah.
excellent at bringing chaos to things and
Yeah.
creating a plan and a strategy and all of that. But there is this beauty of saying having very open hands about that,
Mhm.
to say whatever the day brings, I'm going to adapt. I'm going to follow where the energy is going, where the Holy Spirit is going, where the Lord is taking me. And there is a level of courage that's required for that. And this is so funny. I was thinking about the ice cream analogy again, and I was like, you know what? Every time I go to the ice cream place, I get the same flavor. And like that's not very courageous of me. Because usually it's like, well, I feel like if I spend the money and I eat the sugar, which sugar is not a good thing for me as a diabetic. So if I'm eating ice cream, I know that I'm like, that's a big deal. I'm going to have to compensate for it. I'm going to have to, manage it. And I'm chicken to get another flavor. So the
Yeah.
next time I go get ice cream in honor of you, I'm going to get a flavor I've never had
Great.
before
Good.
because why not?
Yeah. Why
I love
not?
it. I love it. So
Yeah, I mean,
good.
I think it's been a fun way for people to, everyone's always like, oh yeah, that's like head
Yeah.
nodding because it does vary so much,
Yeah.
and it's never wrong. I mean, it doesn't
Right.
mean somebody has to jump out of an airplane, but maybe for
Right.
some, that is the right level of courage. And
Right.
other people have just stepped into hard conversations that they've put off
Yeah.
because, that is that,
That's the
taking
flavor of
action
that
in the
day.
face of
Yeah.
fear. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was the
I
flavor
love
of the
it.
day. Exactly.
I love it. Well, Megan, thank you for inspiring us about what day-to-day courage looks like. And your career story is just inspiring. It's probably a little scary to some people to hear, but it's also just a beautiful testament to what it looks like to leaning in and letting God shape and form you along the way. So thank you for bringing all that wisdom and insight and courage to our conversation today.
Happy to. I hope it blesses somebody. It's been, like I said, lots of twists and turns, and it definitely hasn't been linear. But I love that, in God's view, it probably is linear and was the plan. And so I think that's, just kind of some of my epiphanies coming out of this
Yeah.
introspective season is
Yeah.
we have a lot of worldly views on how things should be, and just what's that heavenly view, and
Yeah.
when things don't look as they should, that's probably perfectly okay.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Megan. Such a great conversation. Well, that was a rich, rich conversation. Isn't Megan's story such a beautiful reminder that a career with God is rarely linear, but always, always purposeful? So, as we wrap up, as usual, I'm going to pull out 3 takeaways and a challenge from this conversation. The first takeaway that was so meaningful to me was Megan's perspective that courage sometimes just looks like taking it one day at a time. I tend to rely probably overly on a plan, but sometimes courageous obedience is just this willingness to recognize that we can plan our days, but God orders our steps. And I love that she said, whatever the day brings, I'm just going to walk through it with God, whether the basement floods or something in the family needs a shift or leadership responsibilities pile up. No matter what, just putting one foot in front of the other and trusting God sometimes is the right next step. The second takeaway was the conversation about ice cream, right? And that courage looks different for each of us and sometimes different on different days. Just like, what is the flavor of ice cream you want to try today, or what is the one that you like the most? So I really thought that was a helpful reminder to me that Courage for me is going to look different than courage for you. Courage for me this week is probably going to look different than courage for me in a month. But recognizing that it evolves over time, just like our faith does. And then the third thing that I took away was this idea that God often uses really unexpected chapters to shape our calling over time. Megan said when she looked back over her career, P&G, entrepreneurship, living in India, launching a social enterprise, leading the garage group, it might look like a bit of a zigzag. But what she can see when she looks back is that each chapter prepared her for the next one. Every season formed something new in her. And the same is true for us, friends. God doesn't waste anything. He's forming and shaping us through our career, even in the twists and turns that we might endure. So here's my challenge for you this week. I want you to ask yourself the simple question, Megan so inspired me. Where might God be inviting you to practice courage right now? Not somebody else's version of courage, your version, your ice cream flavor. Not necessarily some dramatic thing that we might imagine, but what is your next faithful step? Maybe it's trusting God in an unclear career season, or maybe it's initiating a conversation that you've been avoiding, a hard conversation. Maybe it's slowing down long enough to create some space to really listen for His direction. Or maybe courage for you is simply choosing to put one foot in front of the other during a really overwhelming season. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you to remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. There's going to be fear, but moving forward with God through it, in the middle of it, that's what courage looks like. Well, hey, thank you again for tuning in to the Faith Driven Leader podcast. Please like this episode, rate our show, share this episode if it moved you or meant something to you. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on the Faith Driven Leader.